Well, we are going to skip the intro and dive right into it just because we are running a little bit behind. Not sure who to blame in this situation. I don't know if I blame
it's me because we have daylight savings time.
I don't know if I blame myself for not knowing or Brian for not telling me, but daylight savings doesn't exist in Arizona, and apparently, I'm in the. I hear myself in the background. So yeah, so I was thinking the show was in an hour. It was absolutely not in 1 hour. It was about 10 minutes ago start. So that's why we're late.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and blame myself for that one. That is on me. Also, unsure on Juju on when he's going to be here. So we're waiting to see on that if he is going to be able to join us. So little technical difficulties on his end over there. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Brian, how are you doing today, sir? Sorry for being late.
It's all good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Brian texted me like, where are you at like 1 after? And I was like, what are you talking about? The show doesn't start for another hour. He's like, 6 p.m. Central? I'm like, yeah, it's only 4 here. And then the realization sunk in. Panic set in. So, Caleb, appreciate you hopping in here. Welcome back, guys. What's going on, man? I appreciate you. All right, let's go ahead and dive into a little bit. You know, we got some press conferences yesterday, and I know you had a chance to take a look at them. I watched them in their entirety earlier, but let's just go ahead and start. I'll start by listing the people who are going to be missing spring. Few of these limited, but these are just the kind of big names. Alvano limited, Demetrius Bell, Turner Corcoran, Jalen George, Gunnar Gatula, Roger Gradney, Sua Lafotu, Dawson Merritt, Pierce Mooberry, Carter Nelson, Teddy Prohaska. Those guys are going to be out for spring. So do you think it's a concern or?
I think it's more of a chance for these young guys to get some experience and playing with the ones and twos. And that's what I was talking about on my recap video today was it's important for these, especially on that young offensive line and defensive line, for these guys to take advantage of those extra reps because not often are these guys going to be going against ones and twos this early in their career.
Yep. No, I agree. And it's just Demetrius Bell. I'm really wanted to see him come back so we can see just kind of what we got in him. Just unfortunate how his start has been here. So, but yeah, outside of that, he says Jalen George surprised me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Jalen. Rhule didn't dive into actual formalities of the injuries.
No, he just kind of left it at that. I was thought he was going to put some on the end of it, like, you know, not these aren't a concern, stuff like that, but didn't put anything on tail, and it just got right into the question. So doesn't seem like he's too terribly concerned with how overall he's talking about the team, though. So we'll see. Sorry, my son hit the send button. I heard good things about George. That's all right. I was like, I'm just gonna guess that part didn't get finished there.
I didn't even read that fully.
Yeah, I heard good things about him as well. So we'll see what happens with that. But let's talk about Matt Rhule and the conversation that they had overall with him. Some of the things he talked about, you know, just kind of going down the line in order. But the first thing that he touched on was this team being further ahead than any team he's had in the past. You know, even at his previous locations. Their mental maturity, their physical, you know, their physicality, their strength, those type of things. He mentioned that, which, I mean, to be honest, it has to be in the Big Ten. But I feel like Matt Rhule's kind of talking like he really believes this team has like turned a corner, and like next year we're finally going to get to see that, you know, showcased.
Yeah, he has a very quiet confidence about him right now. It seemed like that UCLA time frame, kind of like a switch was flipped, and that's when he started revamping the coaching staff. He started revamping the roster pretty quickly when the portal opened up. He's got a very quiet confidence about how good this team really could be. You know, I think it's huge for us in this year 3 to kind of take that next step to show that the Rhule, like that 1 year, year 1, you kind of struggle, year 2, you're implementing, and year 3, you're taking off. This has got to be that year for Coach Rhule at Nebraska.
And I feel like it is just the way everything's fallen in place. You know, he's finally got his coordinators. He's finally got his coaching staff built. Very, very aggressive in attacking the portal this offseason. So I feel like he sees this as, the team that could do it. I feel like he knows that he has to put something out there this year that is going to put people on notice that, okay, like it's growing, it's building over there.
Yeah.
So talking about the offensive issues, he talked about issues with consistency. Sometimes they did too much. Holgerson, when he came in there, he's just kind of coming in and keeping the offense very similar to what it was. He basically said they're the same playbook or whatever, but I highly doubt that to an extent.
No, they're not the same.
Yeah, so not doing too much with it, staying within the confines of their verbiage and stuff like that, which that I understand. But what was your take on, kind of the offense, him talking about the offensive issues? He talks about Holgerson as a unifying force, works with everyone on the staff, and holds players to a high standard. Just sounded like he came in and kind of took charge and said, yeah, like Matt Rhule said, he said, this is how we're doing things.
Yep. The way I've always thought of it, this new staff, is you have a head coach that oversees everything. You have a head coach that oversees the offense, the head coach that oversees the defense, and that's what Dana Holgerson is. Yep. 17 years as a college head coach with proven success. He knows what he wants. He knows what it's supposed to look like. I think when Rhule said that last year at times there's consistency issues, and then what stood out the most was he was saying they were doing too much, and it just makes me always go back to the original comments Holgerson made about just there's stuff in there that he even didn't understand. He's like, how am I supposed to understand this? And the kids, if I can't teach it. So he threw it out. Make it simple. There's a reason there's a saying, keep it simple, stupid. That's what he's doing. And that's what's going to make this offense really take off, especially now you've added legit threats on the outside with Dane Key, with Hunter. You got Ja'Cory coming back for year 2. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic with the offense under Dana Holgerson.
100%. Yeah. The other Dave, appreciate you hopping in here. Is Rhule motivating or fat shaming Dylan? 240 is a bit hefty for a lean big QB. A little bit of both.
It was so confusing to me. Like, is he really 240, or was he just saying throwing a number out there? Because he did not look that big.
He didn't look 240. Because how tall is he? He's 6'3". Yeah, that doesn't look like 240 to me.
Yeah,
that doesn't look like 240 to me. So I don't know, but I get what he's saying. But at the same time, that's kind of his build. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to lean him down too much. I get rid of some of the excess, maybe fluff on there. Slim him down. It's been the off season now. Get him back in full playing shape. But he talked about him being more mobile, more fleet of foot, and stuff like that. So that part of it was interesting. Do they want him to be? And I would imagine it's more so in a sense of being able to escape the pocket, scramble when necessary, that type of thing. More so than any other aspect.
That's the big thing with Dylan is he needs to be able to, on a consistent basis. And Coach Rhule said on third down, scramble to get that first down. I really don't care what down it is. If there's 4 or 5 yards in front of you and no one's open, just take off and run. Who cares if it's 2 or 3 yards? Just keep the ball moving down the field. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one of those things, just teaching him when, get down, when to get out of bounds. Yeah. If he's anything like Patrick Mahomes, he could just, play the officials and just drop last second and get a penalty on the other team and claim he
just like Boston College game,
a head injury. Exactly. Just like that. But yeah, that was a late slide. But at the same time, Texans player got penalized and fined and suspended for the same hit. So it was illegal under review there. So it was illegal in college football then. But yeah, the late slide stuff. No, it shouldn't have been though. But that was super interesting. Dylan's weight Ozempic. Yeah, I don't think the Ozempic's going to get it done. Someone is salty about Texans. Oh, dude, I've been salty, bro.
It's okay. We're gonna suck next year. We've got no cap space now. We're totally screwed.
I've been salty. We're gonna be pretty good. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. For some reason, not now. For some reason, Julian's picture popped up on my screen from that we're gonna pull up for him. Let's go through talking a little bit more about what he was talking about with Holgerson. Yeah, you mentioned you want to talk about this the other day, but insight into his offense from your perspective, what do you think we're going to see a lot of this year? Because we've talked about this a little bit before, but again, I just think we're going to see kind of a lot of what you talked about just now, where it's just like taking what the defense gives you little by little, chunking, just getting the offense in a rhythm. And then once you get in a rhythm, then just kind of let everything flow from there.
Yeah, the big thing with Dana's offense, and if anyone hasn't seen him talk about his offense, there's tons of stuff on YouTube where you can find it. But
yeah,
at an extremely high level where it's like speaking Chinese probably. But the big thing with his offense is just getting the ball to the playmakers in space. Doesn't matter if you're running, a go ball or a dig route or whatever. It's just get the ball to somebody that's a playmaker in space. And we saw that a lot towards the end of the season when he took over, where he identified Emmett Johnson. He identified Ja'Cory Barney, and it was just screens. It was quick passes. It was hitch routes. It was reverses. It was just quick things to let that person get the ball and go make a play. They're definitely going to take their deep shots. Oh, yeah. Mesh routes galore, especially in that BC game. There's so many mesh routes. And that's really good for Nebraska when you got guys on the edge or at receiver that have speed to burn. You just tell them to go burn that guy, run a mesh route, get the ball after
tight end
completion.
Having speed at the tight end position really helps those too.
Yeah. Harburg, I think, is going to be like a huge threat in this offense. I think his athleticism is going to be, and Rhule talked about it too. Where he's like, anybody could have just transferred and whatever. Yeah. But Harburg's a special athlete, and it's unfortunate we're only going to get 1 year of him at tight end.
I know. And he also talked about, as soon as they saw him at tight end, they were like, yeah, we're moving him 100%. Yeah. They were going to juggle the two, but they're like, no, 100% we're moving him. And that just speaks to his athleticism. I mean, last year, he had one of the fastest speeds in college football at 22-something miles per hour on one of the runs when he came in and took over early in the season. So dude is a freak athlete. And he talked about, a lot of what opened the door for that was just how good Jalen Gramstead has looked coming into the building. Mm-hmm. That was interesting to get kind of some insight on how everything's going with Jalen Gramstead and how comfortable they feel with him, as the potential backup if need be. Size is a huge disadvantage there, but he just talks about, his attitude, his winning mentality, his experience, and his accuracy, stuff like that. What were your thoughts on that?
I liked the comparison where he was like, it's similar to in the NFL when you have that rookie or that young QB and you're bringing in an older veteran that kind of helps along the way. He specified too, he's not teaching Dylan, he's just kind of helping him, where it's like, he's been in college football now, Jalen has, for going on his 5th season. He's been around, whether it was NAIA or Nebraska, it's college football at the end of the day. He understands the work that is needed. And he won an NAIA title too, which, it's a lower level.
He was the MVP.
He won the title. Yeah.
He was the MVP.
The kid was really good in NAIA. I am struggling with that right now. But I also like too that he pointed out that this is a guy we trust fully to run the offense if we need him to run it. And that's huge, especially when you don't really know what you have other than Marcus Davia and TJ Lateef in the quarterback room, who haven't really proven anything at the level yet.
Yeah, no, and I think that would be kind of an absolute disaster if it turned to one of those guys. No knock on them, extremely talented. They're just not ready. You know what I'm saying? Just like people were talking about Dylan being a top-rated 5-star not being ready, and then you talk about having to throw potentially a 4-star in there when they weren't even supposed to play in the season. Yeah, that's a disaster in the making. So talking a little bit more about Raiola, he did mention how Raiola's got to kind of step up in terms of, year one, kind of put your head down, earn the guys' respect. But this year needs to step up, be more vocal, be a leader, and kind of push himself, but not only push himself, push the guys around him a little bit more. Yeah,
being that vocal leader, he said that year one, he was kind of like that quiet guy that just wanted to earn respect and earn that trust. Mm-hmm. This year, you've already done that now quietly. Now it's time to be that vocal guy, that rah-rah guy when you're 20-yard line and you got 2 minutes on the clock and you got to go 80 yards to win the game. You can't just be that quiet kid anymore. You've got to be that loud vocal guy, like his idol Mahomes is. Mahomes is very loud when it comes to leading. He's a very boisterous leader.
Yeah. Boisterous. I'm crying. Anyways. No, but yeah, and we started to see that transition into more of that style, as the season went on. I feel like, I felt like he was constantly trying to keep the energy up, keep the vibes up on the field, on the sideline. Like I felt like he took that upon himself as the season went along, especially to kind of be that guy. Comes out, hypes up the crowd, that type of thing. So I think he was coming to his own with that this year. And I from everything how well respected he is and everything. And you talk about a guy like Dane saying, he's a big part of the reason he wanted to come to Nebraska. Yeah. That just shows how well respected he is already at such a young age. So, yeah. And then the comment about the 240, that he won't be successful at 240 pounds. So trying to slim him down to be more mobile again, just not sure.
I have a hard time believing he's 240.
Yeah. But maybe he's just joking or something. And they're just talking about slimming him down. But yeah. So, but then he talks about, keep him trending in the right direction. Sometimes year one, a freshman quarterback can come out, play well, or make some mistakes. Then they come out in year two and they take, rest in their laurels of, where they play well. I don't see Dylan as that type of quarterback. I don't think he's happy with how last season went fully.
Yeah. I don't think so either. He was even talking about just too, as like all freshmen in general, like they have that little success that you get as a freshman, and then they see that sophomore slump. They got to do whatever they can to prevent all those freshmen from last season from having that sophomore slump, because a lot of them we're going to be depending on too.
Correct. Yeah, because he mentioned Ja'Cory, he mentioned Vincent Shavers. So so that is one of the biggest things is keep your talent trending in the right direction, and then also trying not to let them get stolen in the portal. So that's another big part of the equation here. Talking about what Dane Key said about, Dylan Raiola's involvement, I think that kind of nips in the butt the idea of Dylan Raiola is not a good quarterback, because Dane Key talked about he watched the tape on the teams that he wanted to go to, because he talked about the overwhelming kind of process of entering the portal, because it's something we don't really hear about a lot, but he's like, as soon as the portal opened, I woke up to a million texts from a bunch of different schools saying like, we're interested in you, blah blah blah. But he had to kind of narrow down to a few schools in his mind, and of course DeKel Shorts was already over here at that time. So he was sitting there kind of mulling over his options, but he said he watched on all the teams he was interested in, watched their offense, watched the quarterback play, watched different things. And he said that all roads led to Nebraska, and Raiola's abilities and his play was one of the main reasons for that. So I think that nips that in the butt, the whole talk about him not looking like a good quarterback, on tape, on film.
Yeah, I like too when he was talking about when he was at Nebraska for his visit. He said that Dylan was with him the entire time on the visit, and no other school that he visited did that. And he visited Georgia. He visited, I believe, Ole Miss as well. So you're talking about some pretty high-level teams, and their quarterbacks or their projected starter quarterbacks didn't even really hang out with Dane Key that much. So I like that Dylan was really involved with getting him here.
I do too. I think that's something Matt Rhule has he's very good with like wherewithal of having the forethought to do things, That's why he's typically the first guy to start a trend, the spring game cancellations, like that type of stuff. Like he has that kind of foresight and is willing to pull the trigger to kind of make the change or whatever. So it's one of those things that's it's very very valuable.
Even with like hiring GMs too. I mean, he hired Sean Patton last year as a GM, and he was one of the first coaches in college football to do that. And then this offseason is when we really saw it go full swing, where everyone was hiring a GM. And Nebraska only hired a new one because Sean Patton, which Rhule talked about, he was wanting to be more on like the analytics side of the football program and like the financial side of the program. Like Rhule he seems like he's a step ahead of everybody at all times. I love it. It's such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and I believe there's also like chief of staff on college football rosters too.
Yep, Dr. Susan Elza is the chief of staff. Yeah, and that was 3 years ago when he hired her.
That sounds like a political position.
It does, very much so. Yeah.
All right. So talked a little bit Rocco Spindler. Listen to him talk. What are some of the takeaways that you had of Rocco?
He is a very interesting guy. I thought he presents himself really well too. Like he just sounds like he knows a lot about what he's talking about. One thing I thought was interesting, which we kind of all knew, but to kind of hear from the horse's mouth is a little different when he's saying that he didn't want to enter the portal. It's just when they did their end of season meetings or whatever, the stars no longer aligned, is what he said, which I think that's interesting for Notre Dame to not want a 2-year starter on their roster. I'm not sure why they didn't want him back, but
Me neither.
they didn't want him,
they
and we get the benefit. And he said that it was a quick turnaround. He was looking for trust in his position coach, trust in his head coach to get him to the NFL. Nebraska was the best fit. The O-line coach at Notre Dame also coached under, I can't remember Notre Dame's old O-line coach, but they're all there together. Donovan Raiola, their current coach, and their old coach, they're all there together. So they have the same philosophies, and that was huge for him.
Yeah, 100%. And just overall, you can tell he's going to be a guy who's going to come in here immediately make the guys around him better. But yeah, like the expectation there is, and we'll get into a second where Matt Rhule is talking about O-line, or we talk about it a little bit, and this is something I've said on this channel since I started on here, basically, and it's the fact that offensive lines, you can't put that together in the portal. Contrary to popular belief, you can't put 5 guys together and expect them to learn the quarterback's tendencies, know the guy to the right, to their left, because they have to be a unit. If one person can block well, if all 5 can individually block well, but they're not blocking together as a unit, it doesn't matter. And so I'm glad he did point that out as well, because they can go get a couple guys, like a Rocco Spindler, put some money there, but building the O-line through recruiting is still the model of a successful team. And like I said, he brought in 2 older guys to help, but feels the O-line's where it needs to be. And I feel we're both kind of right there in that same boat. Depth is not where it needs to be, though.
Yeah. I liked his quote Rocco said about the O-line. He said, 5 play as one, you see through one set of eyes. That is like exactly how I would describe offensive linemen. It's just, it's 5 individuals, but it's 5 guys making up one person, essentially. They're all objective is the same thing. It's a little different as a receiver and as a running back. It's the only position group where you all have to be in sync at all times.
Yeah, literally at all times.
Yeah.
And, so that can only be built through time and reps together, time in the trenches together, reps together, see guys' tendencies, see what they do. And learn from them. And then that way you can block as a unit. It's the biggest thing, is just building. The Colts did it so well for so long. Offensive line, they always had a offensive line that they drafted a lot of good guys. So let's see some comments here. I feel like Linhart had a huge sophomore slump. How do you feel about Linhart? I
feel like his snap count was probably down.
I feel like I expect a little bit more of him. So I do see that. Yeah. Because, Cam Linhart, you hear him speak and you can just tell how, smart he is and how well-spoken he is and stuff like that. And it makes you want to root for him because he's a leader. So hopefully we can see a lot more of him this year. It'll be curious to see, though, because with that, it's a matter of, hopefully there's nothing wrong there. He's not doing this right and kind of falls back, but I doubt that'll happen. I feel like he's going to be one of the main guys out there this year on this defense, with experience, of course.
Yeah. And they said they view him as another starter at the time, I guess, along Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Jamari Butler.
Butler.
And so now it's really his time to take over that spot and be the every down defensive end that we think he can be. The one thing for Cam is at his position, he's a little light. And by that, I mean, he's like 6'2", 6'3", he's 250 pounds. And he's going up against these 6'5", 6'6" left tackles and right tackles. He doesn't have the long arms that you typically see with defensive ends. So he's got to figure out how to combat that, I guess. And I'm not an expert on that. I think it does hinder him a little bit, just his lack of size and lack of reach.
Yeah, it's going to come down to just technique and playing leverage. So if he can learn to, kind of fight the hands well, avoid the punch out of those, those tackles and stuff like that. But it's going to require an extra level of focus and him being locked in on every single play, because he's got to find that little spot that he can take advantage of it and get in there and move the guy. So, but yeah, I expect a lot of good things out of him this year. So agree, expect a lot more for Cam. He has the talent, without a doubt. Extremely, extremely talented guy. For sure. Talking a little bit more about Dane, Raiola, and this offense. With this wide receiver core, and Dane talked about him also wanting to come over to play with Ja'Cory. He talked about all the things that Ja'Cory did really well, and also not only Raiola, not only Ja'Cory, but just talked about, of course, Hardly Gilmore coming up from Kentucky. Had some good things to say about him as well. But this wide receiver core, the more I look at it, the more I think about it, the more I fall in love with the fact that this might be the best receiving core in terms of just an overall complete receiving core we've had I'm talking a long time at Nebraska.
Yeah. The best receiving core I can think of off the top of my head would be like that. It'd be like that Kenny Bell. Who else was on that? Stanley Morgan.
Was Riley on that one?
Brandon Riley was on that one. I think Alonzo Moore, who was okay. The Morney Pearson L.
Yeah, DPE.
What's crazy is none of those guys were really NFL guys, except for, Stanley is, but he's like a special teams guy. Kenny Bell had a cup of coffee, but like none of those guys were elite college receivers, but they were damn good receivers.
Dude, they played hard, and they were excellent college receivers. And like I just think they were very gritty. I feel like that wide receiver core was very, very gritty and tough. And I think that's what they're trying to instill in this wide receiver core too, because I think a lot of wide receiver cores have gone away from that physicality and that toughness too. So I think that's a lot of things they want to instill in this receiving core. But yeah, overall, just talent wise, like you got some guys here. Ja'Cory, talent wise, probably not the size to get to the NFL, but you never know. But you have some guys who could seriously. Dane Keith's probably going to be a second round draft pick.
That's what I think. Second round pick.
So you got talent galore in this wide receiver room, and now you have a good quarterback to take advantage of it. That's why I'm super excited about this. The sky's the limit there, and I think without Dane Keith, this unit wouldn't be complete. And so just hear him speak about the process and how locked in is and how happy he is with the people around him. That was big, and the coaches around him too.
Yeah, he kind of broke some news that hadn't made public. From my understanding was that Nebraska also brought over Andrew Verboy or something like that is his name, the assistant wide receiver coach from Kentucky. Apparently he's at Nebraska now, and he credited him a lot, saying, I can't remember who it was, but they asked about his agility and his ability to like break in and out of routes and whatnot. And he said, Coach Verb is who helped me improve my agility, my change of direction, etc. And then Coach Short is who really helped improve his actual like skill with catching the ball, understanding the routes, and just being physical.
Yeah. So you literally bring over two of the guys that helped him and Hardly Gilmore the most, and put them on this, this wide receiver core and get those two guys over. One of their strategy there, but DeKel Shorts, obviously, very good coach. Very good young coach. And, you got a guy as talented as Dane Keith. That means you're a damn good coach. So let's go talk a bit more about the O-line, because, when talking about the O-line, said there where they need to be. Do you think, again, with Raiola, how with not Dylan Raiola, Donovan Raiola?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Just so we're clear, how well do you think this line is going to improve over the next year? And do you think Justin Evans is 100% the center? Because I think we both kind of are in agreement there that he is. Because they did ask about that.
Yeah, Coach Rhule said he's rotating between left guard and center. I think a lot of, just to like start off with that part of the question, I think a lot of it depends on Sam Sledge and if he is ready. Which if he's not ready, it's not a huge deal. He's like a redshirt sophomore, I think, a redshirt freshman. So like it's not a big deal. I would personally, I think Evans is going to be at center. Corcoran's going to be your left guard. Pritchett will be your left tackle. Rocco's your right guard. And then Gunner or maybe Teddy. Who else could be over there on the right side? I'm trying to think. I can't think of anybody really that would be an option on the right side. But I think they're definitely going to get better. I think their biggest question marks right now are tackles, which are the most important positions on the offensive line. And if Nebraska struggles, it's going to be because of tackle play. I'm just not 100% sold. I think Pritchett has all the potential in the world, and you and I have talked about it. He's just got to put it together. And Teddy's biggest problem is staying healthy. If Gunner's on the right side, I'm not worried at all. I think Gunner actually is probably very underrated for how he handled and came into that situation last year as a redshirt freshman. I think it's going to be a pretty good O-line.
Yeah, I do too. And Pritchett, a lot of it hinging on him if it stays the way it is, like you said. But talent's there. Just see if we can bring that consistency out of him and get his technique where it needs to be. Because, again, what was he, a former 5-star recruit that you could have potentially on this line? That is a sneaky guy with a lot of upside. That could make this team night and day better if he pans out the way he could. I'm not expecting too much. I don't want to go in too high of expectations because we've been burned by that before. But the talent is there. Just couldn't get his footing over at Alabama. So just couldn't get consistent over there. But I think
that goes for a lot of the O-line too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, if you look at like recruiting rankings alone, which I think that take with a grain of salt a little bit, because once you're in college, it's different. But Gunnar Gattulo was a 4-star. Teddy Prohaska was a borderline 5-star. Turner Corcoran was a borderline 5-star. Sam Sledge was a high 3-star or 4-star, depending on your service. Like you said, Pritchett was a 5-star. He was like a top 20 overall player. Like that's just your potential starting lineup. And if you want to go into your backups, well, I mean, you still have Henry Lutovsky. We haven't talked about him. He could be your starting left guard. He was a borderline 4-star, if I recall correctly. So. Maybe he was a 4-star. But then you had like Preston Taumua, Gibson Pyle. It's loaded with 4-star talent. It's just you got to put it together.
Yep, 100%. I think that's been the biggest struggle so far, is putting it all together. But over the last couple of years, we haven't been able to keep the line healthy. So that plays a factor to an extent as well. So hopefully the line can be healthy this year. But again, depth, I think, would be the biggest thing to address. Just maybe get a couple more pieces on there just to have something to fall back on. But it sounds like Rhule really trusts his young guys, man. He listed a lot of them. Sounds like he really trusts them.
My biggest concern is the two guys you're really banking on coming back healthy are Turner and Teddy.
Yeah.
And they both have now, like, Teddy's been hurt 3 years in a row. Turner's been hurt 2 years in a row. Like, now you have legit health concerns with two of potentially your top, and not in my opinion, in Coach Rhule's opinion, you have two injury-prone guys that are top on the offensive line. Like, what do you do if both of them go down again? Because now you're thrusting another freshman into the starting lineup that probably isn't ready. I mean, we were pretty spoiled with Gunnar Gattulo last year.
In a make or break year too. That's why I don't know how much, like, if the risk reward there is very steep. But like I said, who knows? Maybe he has a lot of confidence in somebody to step in and be able to, or a lot of confidence in the line as it sits to step in and be able to step up and next man up mentality and still make it work. So, but we did also see Holgerson's offense, take a lot of pressure off the offensive line last year by, just getting the ball out of Raioula's hands quickly. Like we said, getting that offense out of rhythm, getting them going, widening the splits and the run lanes. So to make their lives a little bit easier. So that offensive line improved a lot based on Holgerson's offense. And that's something else that we got to factor in, because it is the same offensive line that was there the entire season, but it's not the same offensive line that we saw at the end of the season in Holgerson's offense.
Yeah. I think back to when Holgerson took over, and the only sack that immediately comes to mind is the one at the end of the Iowa game. Like, I don't think there was another sack in the USC or the Wisconsin game, if I recall correctly. And the only reason Dylan got sacked was because Bryce Benhart got absolutely obliterated on the edge. But even then, like, it was, every route was a go route, basically. Like, it was, we got to go score to win this game. So everyone knew we were passing. Iowa pinned their ears back. So I think the offensive line, just with the scheme change, will be benefited, like you said, quite a bit.
Yeah. So looking at this, so he did get sacked in the USC game.
He did. Okay.
No sacks in the Wisconsin game. He got sacked a few times in the Iowa game. So going back before that, it won't let me go back further than that. But yeah, consistently, and then you see his QBR improved. It jumped from 111.7 by 147.1 by the Wisconsin game. QBR went from 11.9 versus UCLA to 84.4 versus Wisconsin. It jumped up by 40 week 1, another 40 week 2, and then regressed by like 10 against Iowa. So just everything consistently improving there. Completion percentage went from 51% to 71 to 73 to 68. So
nice.
everything improved there. But yeah, the offensive line clearly making life a lot easier in those last few games. It just felt like there was less throws where he was just on his heel, on his heels, throwing off his back foot, and or just like, not able to get his hips into it squared, trying to run away from a lineman, throwing it up to somebody, So that's what caused him to be able to get a rhythm and improve his completion percentage, improve the flow of the offense overall. It was just getting the ball in the end zone. That was the toughest part for us this entire season, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do think the offensive line will improve a ton just based on that.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it seemed like the running game improved substantially as well. Like it just felt like there was bigger gaps. Emmett was more explosive. I don't know if it's just me just kind of drinking this Dane Holgerson offense Kool-Aid, but it felt like there was so much more rhythm. It felt like everything was going like with a purpose. I don't know how to describe it. It just felt better.
Well, with EJ, he just was used properly and was used.
Yeah,
but the main thing was used properly. That was the biggest issue with him, is he was not being used properly. None of the running backs were. The running back rotation made absolutely no sense. So, it was Holgerson that came in there and really used him the correct way, and that opened up the rest of the offense the way it should. And because before, our running backs were basically, we were rotating them like crazy and getting nothing out of them. No fault of theirs. They just weren't getting the right play calls. The running game wasn't getting set up, vice versa. They weren't establishing the running game. They were just expected to go in there, run the ball with no rhyme or reason. But yeah, Emmett Johnson, he finally came in. Dana Holgerson, practice 1, came in, identified Emmett Johnson's talent. Literally asked Matt Rhule, why is he not starting? And that's why he got the opportunity he did when Holgerson came in. So yeah, it's going to make
an awkward one to explain away. When your new OC that's been here for 3 days is like, why is this guy not starting?
Literally. No, but I like that. I was able to come in and like call it out, because Emmett's a workhorse, man. He's gonna work his tail off, and this season is going to be pretty good for him. I hope he stays healthy the entire season, because it's going to be a really good season for him.
We need him to as well.
They put a lot into getting him back, so a lot of effort, pay increase. So that was wonder what the rift was between Satterfield and EJ. It was a lot of people really it was, I'm trying to find a way to put
a sensitive topic.
It is. But essentially, I think Satterfield, from what I heard, Satterfield hasn't had a personal issue with EJ. EJ was made promises, because I talked about this before the 2023 season. In the offseason of that season, Emmett Johnson was splitting. This is before a lot of people knew who he was, but I posted that video 2 years ago of me talking about Emmett. He was getting half the first team reps in that spring, and came out in the season and didn't play until people got injured, and then he was forced into the starting role. Before that, he was supposed to start that Minnesota game and was rug pulled at the end.
That's his home state school too. That would have been huge for him.
Same thing happened the start of this season, because we all expected Emmett Johnson to be the starter at the start of the season, and all of a sudden he was not. Reason being that. So there was just friction there for sure. Yeah. So, but luckily they got that resolved in-house, and you can thank Dana Holgerson for getting EJ back for sure.
Yeah.
Simply Satterfield was not a good offensive coordinator. Absolutely not. He didn't.
Yeah, those
maybe a good
South Carolina numbers were kind of fool's gold.
Yeah, he may be a tight ends coach, a good tight ends coach, but that definitely not a coordinator by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, that's why I'm happy that Rhule was kind of smart enough to make that decision. Like, clearly it's not working, but I still see value as a coach, but I can't have you call him plays. And
yeah,
then comes Dana Holgerson, who, did we talk about his iconic quote to Dane Key before he left after his unofficial or his official visit?
I don't think we did.
Oh gosh, it was an absolute zinger. Danke was talking about it today in his interview, and he said right before he was leaving Nebraska to go visit whoever else, he said Holgerson walked up to him and he said, if you don't want to be that guy, stay at Kentucky.
Yeah,
that is freaking awesome.
And then he's like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah,
that was awesome. I love Holgerson's mentality. He's just a very aggressive go-getter guy. But that was pretty awesome. Let's talk a little bit about Dasan McCullough in his interview. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways on Dasan McCullough?
Yeah, I was kind of intimidated watching it, honestly. That guy's huge.
all I could focus on was the fact that I was thinking like I would be so annoyed having the hair in my eyes constantly.
Oh yeah,
because like he was just sitting there having to do this.
Yeah,
and I was like I would be so like I could never like I had a bowl cut. When I was, it's like PTSD because I had a bowl cut when I was in elementary school and it like irritated my forehead. So I thought I had Tourette's because I always did this, but it was just because the hair was irritating my face. So like I get like flashbacks to that.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I think every kid had one of those at some point if they grew up in the 90s, 2000s time frame.
Yeah, but unfortunately for me, my forehead was too sensitive apparently. Now my hair's gone, so I can't do it. But anyways, back to Dasan.
Back to the stuff. Dasan. Yeah, super informative. I liked the point he made about he kind of wanted to hone in on a specific position, like have a home. Because at Indiana, he was playing safety and outside linebacker and edge. And at Oklahoma, he was playing, I don't remember what they called it, but it was like this position where he's all over the field. And at Nebraska, they said, we want you to come here, play one spot. Granted, that spot will be all over the field, but you're going to be the jack linebacker. So now we know where he's actually playing.
Yeah.
And I like that he was like, it's my last go around. Like I need to settle in on a position and just go ball out. And that was what he stressed for like a 5-minute rant was like, I need to ball out like my final year.
Yeah. At Oklahoma, because I watched his film, they had him almost like as like a package linebacker, that type of thing. So yeah, very much so. You know, he talked about being a jack here. He's going to be excellent at that position just because he is so versatile. You know, one of the things is they did use him in multiple ways, but he just wants to be a mainstay focal point, you know, of the defense and just kind of he can do a little bit of everything like well, even just kind of his speed laterally. You know, I posted that one video that got copyright stricken by ESPN, even though it was all 22 press box footage. Still mad about that.
ESPN.
You can't copyright that, ESPN. But there was Xavier Worthy was on the outside, you know, and he was just on the outside of the offensive line. And, you know, it was Xavier Worthy lined up one-on-one with somebody on the outside, and they threw a little quick screen to Xavier Worthy, and he was able to get out on that. By the time Xavier, so the lineman in front of him stood Xavier up, and he was able to get over on that and immediately chop his legs out as soon as Xavier started driving. So, I mean, he's quick, but he's also a massive human, as we saw there. Yeah. He's got the length, he's got the strength, explosiveness. He's an athlete. You see him fly around the field. He's an athlete.
And he's played in 3 of the 4 major conferences. So he's kind of seen it all. So, you know, he was at Indiana when he was in the Big Ten. Then he transfers to OU. He's got a season in the Big 12 there, and then a season in the SEC. So he's got a lot of experience against like a bunch of different offenses. And he kind of talked about that too. Like the Big Ten's your traditional run heavy offense. The SEC just has really like freak athletic receivers. Big 12 was like really creative formations. And then someone asked him, like, which do you prefer to be defending? And he's like, the Big 10. Like, it's just head to head, smash mouth football, run heavy. It's what he thrives in, which apparently was probably a big decision and why he came to Nebraska.
Yeah, agreed. And just he's one of the players I'm most excited about this corporate portal class. But yeah, the competition, Dane even talked about that, where he's like, hey, each week we're lining up against some high level ones being in the SEC, that he's like, all these guys have to play or are probably going to play on Sunday. So like it requires an extra level of like being locked and focused, because you have to win half of the reps you would normally win. You have to be even more locked in and focused.
What I find interesting, at least from like the guys that are asking them the questions, is like the media in Lincoln puts SEC on like this pedestal, like they're just above everyone else, but yet the Big Ten's like dominating college football right now. Like to me, it almost comes off like they don't think the Big Ten from a media perspective is as good as the SEC, and like you're stepping down in competition. Like I agree. I don't understand that thought process. Like we have plenty of talent in this conference and two national titles to go for it in the last 2 years. So
yeah,
I mean, it's a different level, I guess, but I don't know. I don't like how they make it seem like the SEC is just this elite above everybody else conference.
No, I agree. I agree with that too, because I see that as well. Media, there's a lot of weird stuff, like a lot of weird thought process with the media that I don't necessarily agree with, but I guess that's the nature of the media. But yeah, it is just kind of weird. Because the SEC, of course, they were the top conference for a while. But like, yeah, you look at this season, the Big Ten dominated this season. So, and it's been pretty close over the last few seasons. It's not like SEC's running away with it, Yeah. So yeah, I don't get that either. But it's one of those things where it's like, at least it's one of the Power 2 conferences. So that way, you get a guy from over there. At least he's going against the same level of competition, at least.
Yeah.
And so that's why, the big name guys like that, and the Dane Keys have to excite you the most because of where they played from or where they came from, how high of a level they played and stuff like that. But yeah, Deshaun was just not happy anymore with his role over there in Oklahoma. So the salt is flowing tonight. 100% is. We started with the Patrick Mahomes roasting, and then now ESPN is on my shit list. Baseball game. Let's check on the baseball game real quick. Because
they just lost. God, I just drew a blank on their Friday starter's name.
They lost?
No, the starting pitcher that goes on Friday. So I just drew a blank on his name.
I was like, I thought it was started.
No, who was it? I don't follow baseball incredibly closely because for some reason no one broadcasts baseball. So Nebraska just lost their starter from their Friday starter for the season.
Yeah, you got to go Big Ten plus.
Somebody in the chat has to drop it because it's going to drive me nuts for the rest of the night.
What is it? Has to drop what?
The name of the Nebraska starter that just lost. We just lost for the season.
Oh, yeah. Drop it in the chat. One more thing I want to talk about. I just wanted to check on that real quick. But one more. It's 1-0, by the way. Nebraska's up. Nice. One of the things I did want to talk about, too, is they did inquire with Dasan McCullough about what winter mat drills are.
Yeah.
And he was talking about it makes you pay attention to detail when things are tough. So, talking about like your chest not hitting the mat fully or your chest not hitting the ground fully, like that type of thing. And then like starts with 10 minutes. And then I guess each mistake they make, it compounds on that. Cause I think Dane Key talked about it. He's like, we didn't do anything like that in Kentucky, or anything like that. So, clearly it's something that Matt Rhule's brought in and they hate it. Dane was like, what did I get myself into? This is his first thought process. But it was interesting to get some insight into what the winter mat drills actually were because I had no idea.
Yeah, I've been like with the guys we've been interviewing, I've wanted to ask them kind of to give us more detail, but I didn't know if it'd be something that like could come back and coach would be like, why are you talking about this outside of the stadium? So I didn't want to, prod too much, but it was a hot topic today, mat drills. Well, that's like every person that was interviewed was asked about mat drills.
Yeah, that was one of the things that like, I wasn't sure about either because I was like, I want them to ask about it, but I wasn't sure if they could. But he gave an idea without really giving what it was. He kept it very vague in terms of like what it helps and what it's designed to help you with, but not exactly all it entails.
Yeah, the only thing we've heard was, I think it was Caden that said he had to flip a 45-pound weight down the field, like for 200 yards, which that would suck.
That would be horrible.
Have you seen the photos where they're on their they're on like a 4-point stance, and they have like a 45 under each hand and a 45 under each foot, and they have to slide across the width of the field.
That's brutal.
I would die if I had to do that.
But they're doing stuff like that, and then they have to focus on small details, not just moving the plates.
It sounds so much like if you were in like basic training or whatever. Like you just
that's what I was about to say. It reminds me of boot camp, because everything in boot camp was about attention to detail. Like no matter what, whether you're tired, no matter what, it was just they preach attention to detail.
Yep, and it's huge. It's some people might like be doing the work. I'm like, man, why does it matter if like my stomach touches the ground or my chest touches the ground? But it's not about your stomach or your chest touching the ground. It's about on Saturdays when you're dog tired, it's the fourth quarter, you got to make a play, and you've played 70 snaps.
Are you taking that shortcut?
Yep. And that's what it's about. And that's what some of these younger guys probably are like, why are we doing this? Well, that's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Attention to detail will help you every step of the way. Even if a kicker, it's like making sure you do everything correctly, get set up correctly, go through your progression correctly. Like it's everything. So I do like what we've heard about winter mat drills so far. I know the players hate it, but I do like what we've heard about it. So, and as far as kind of overall thoughts on what we can expect this spring, do you think in this spring portal, what do you think is the biggest area of concern? Of course, offensive line probably needs to be addressed, but what other position groups do you think?
I think they're going to look offensive line, interior defensive line. I think they're going to look for. I have to think they're looking for a running back.
Yeah,
and I think that would probably round it out.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty set.
It's probably going to be a depth piece. Running back that can come in and fill a role if needed. So we'll see what we can get this late in the portal for sure. But yeah, interior D-line, that is another big one. Mason McConaughey.
Thank you, Caleb.
That was his name. So
yeah, he's a stud too.
What happened with Nebraska basketball?
Look,
are they broken?
Did
you try?
Depends on how honest I can be, because I'm not a fan.
Did you try unplugging and plugging back in?
We tried. We did that 6 years ago.
Okay.
When we hired Fred Hoiberg. I think it's time to unplug it and plug it back in. But
again,
there's 16 million reasons why we can't do that. Unfortunately.
Do you think Matt Rhule can coach basketball?
Yeah.
Maybe John Cook retired from volleyball so he can go coach the basketball team.
I don't know what you do at this point. Like, I hate the narrative that, well, you've never been good, and so like just getting to the tournament once every 6 years is good enough. Like
we're the worst D1 program in the country.
Yeah, like that's the reason why you should be firing Fred Hoiberg, and you go to a coach and you say, look, we're going to give you X amount of dollars and unlimited NIL to get this thing turned around.
Yeah, bro, we're going whoever the number one team in the country is right now, we're going to get their coach.
There's a great coach at it's a small school in Iowa. Just drew a blank. Drake. Forget his name. But he's in year one at Drake, and they're like 20 and like 5, and they're going to be in the tournament. And he's won every step of the way. I can't, like, people are like, oh, well, we just had a bad portal class. Well, who brought in the portal class?
Yep.
Like, exactly. Fred's best year was on the back of Keisei Tominaga, Bryce Williams, Jawan Gary, and Rank Mast. And you had 3 of those 4 guys back this year.
Yep.
And you can argue that Connor Season is worse than Keisei, but they averaged the same amount of points. Yeah. He made like 5 less threes than Keisei Tominaga did. Statistically speaking, they're about the same in terms of production. Keisei was a little different, don't get me wrong.
It was a spark plug. Keisei was a spark plug, though.
Connor was not that kind of a spark plug, but
yeah, that's more of Hoiberg's role on the team.
Yeah.
Is that spark plug. All right, guys. Go ahead.
I was saying the scary part is you're losing 11 players. Like, you have 11 open scholarships on your basketball team right now.
Yep.
You're doing a complete reset again.
Good luck.
It's terrifying.
It's frustrating for sure. They're going to have to spend more money in the portal to get better players here. I think the Iowa game in January broke the team. Having Mass back next year will help for sure. They got it, but they got it.
Comes back.
They got to go. They got to go hard in the portal for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So yeah, Juju wasn't able to join us today. Again, technical difficulties on his end. So we will be having him on probably next week. We'll reschedule him for next week. If you haven't saw in the previous weeks, we've had Bill Bush on, Caden Vermas, Tyson Terry, Tanner Turch, and we're going to have Juju Marks on. So a lot more guests coming up in the coming weeks and months. So y'all stay tuned for that. We got a lot of good stuff, a lot of exciting people that we are talking with now to get them on the show. So like I said, y'all stay locked in and tuned for that. Brian, anything else before we go to sign off?
No, now that we know that daylight savings time has happened in the Midwest, we're good.
Yeah, now it's happened, everything will be back to normal schedule. So yeah, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to go. Give me like 10 minutes because I completely am sitting here on my computer at 4:03 and not realizing the live stream should be starting. And I went to YouTube and I'm like, and then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, of course it says it start an hour. I'm the one that set the time, like in Mountain Time. So I appreciate you, Kayla. Appreciate you hopping on here as always. Appreciate everybody who stopped in to join us. Like I said, y'all stay tuned for the guests we got coming up. And with that being said, we will see you on the next video. Peace.